Hoffman, Everyday Spacer.
I'm Jeff Miller, CME Computer and IT Solutions.
At Everyday Spacer, we show regular folks how to personally and directly participate in space exploration, science, and astronomy. And I forgot something. Let's see if this helps. We're here Friday nights at 9 p.m. Pacific time, midnight Eastern time, and 5 a.m. on Saturday in Germany. We're broadcasting live from Thousand Oaks, California. Thank you so much for being here.
Help us welcome Roger Carlson. We'll be back in 8.3 seconds. There's a link to that book in the description. And before we start off...
Yeah, we got comments already. Yay, welcome.
AC.
Hey, AC.
AC showed up really early.
Yeah, really early.
And Janie. Hi, Janie.
Yep, happy Friday.
Dawn.
Hi, Dawn. Welcome.
And Scott.
Hey, and Scott. All right. You ready?
Yep. Well, there is a whole lot about Roger Carlson. We know you would like to hear from him. For more detail, look at the description for the video. Roger Carlson earned a master's degree in studies of the future from the University of Houston, Clear Lake City branch, Texas. It's like I've never read this before. Yeah. The studies centered around debates between the techno-optimists who predicted abundance and space commerce versus the pessimists who fretted about a new dark age caused by peak resources and the oncoming new ice age. UHCLC is handily near the Johnson Space Center, so space commerce got some favorable comments.
After graduation, Roger could not resist running away and joining the space circus. He commenced an editing and writing career of 35 years at Johnson Space Center and then at Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. JSC work started with the Space Shuttle design and testing, followed by the beginning of NASA's long night of multiple redesigns and so much more.
Okay.
Want to do some comments?
Yeah.
Hi, hey, Naomi. Welcome.
Yeah. Hi, AC. Oh, you're in San Diego. Cool.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Okay. Roger has a brief presentation for us as well, traveling the Silk Orbital Flyway to space with the help of markets. He wrapped up his bio like this. There is still that lingering call of the wild space travel dreams. Oh, wild space travel dreams. Proposals and even slowly improving space flights. We need a lot more improvement if we are to build a spacefaring civilization. That sounds like an everyday spacer to me.
Oh yeah.
Roger, give us some highlights about yourself, and we'll watch for
the audience questions.
The audience's questions. We'll just take them after his talk.
Okay, a highlight or two. I was went off to Johnson Space Center, and then JPL was also involved in energy. So I always wanted to get into energy, environment. They were worried about that. And after I got done with there, we were worried about the needed a Green New Deal to prevent disasters. I said, wait a minute, the Green New Deal was going to cost way too much. So I came up with Save the World Before Breakfast, a better Green New Deal. There it is with the world and everything. And as I was doing that, I thought agriculture really, the farmers and ranchers and foresters can really do it all by themselves. I got Save the World Before Breakfast. The earth alone can save us. And so I've been doing those sorts of things. But then I bumped into Pam the other day, and she was talking about space, and then the old dreams started coming back. But the ideas about marketing, you got to make money at it, or things will end. So I said, the Silk Road is our model to do things. Well, and maybe Columbus and Vasco da Gama, because they were also marketers, even though they were attached to governments. If they didn't make a profit, that was the end of that, versus some of the other big government things that didn't make money, but were a lot of fun and even started some stuff. So maybe I could maybe this would be a good time to get into the Silk Road.
Okay. You ready for this?
I'm ready. There it is. Traveling
Right.
the Silk orbital flyway to space with the help of markets.
Very good.
And there it is. I've started with something in the past, something amazing. 403 to 1433, the Chinese government of the time, the emperors, the Jade Throne, sent about 17,000 crew in 7 voyages up to 1433, and they wiped out some pirates. They went to people and said, "Hey, you just have to agree to be a vassal of the Chinese emperor, and everything will be fine. We'll give you these presents. You give us some little presents back, and that's all good. If you mouthed off, though, boom, these fleets had cavalry, they had artillery, they would smash anybody that messed with them. They went all the way to Africa, brought giraffes back. They got some high-tech stuff for the Arabs had, which was things with lenses and stuff, which was telescopes were about to arrive soon. Anyway, that was all good until the government just lost interest. Then they took their ball and they went home. That was it. That was it. About 60 years later, Vasco da Gama, 1498, came around the Horn with like 170 crew in 4 little ships. He heard stories about how fabulous this other fleet had been and the great presence. The East Africans were nice. They just, they weren't impressed, but they weren't anything like in Calcutta. There was a full-blown riot because the Portuguese did not have good presents to give to them. So they were throwing rocks. The Portuguese answered back with grape shot. And that was the beginning of the European age of exploration and colonies. And that was maybe the first of them, followed by unpleasant things in Mexico from the Spaniards. Anyway, the point was these little guys did something, and that kept at it. Even better is something else about the time of the beginning of the great treasure ships, the great fleet of treasure ships. Oh, I got to say, there's an eerie similarity. 1972, the last moon landing. It's been almost a half century.
Yeah.
They haven't gotten back. And worse, the attempts. They tried to build better rockets and it got delayed. And fortunately, that other guy, marketers, if the government does it, they just could lose interest, just like NASA, just like the Jade Throne in China, need marketeers. And the marketeers I have in mind it was something, they didn't call it that. They were just businessmen who either got into ships or they had horses or they had camels for very dry places. They would go like maybe one week's worth of traveling or maybe a month, and then they would sell to a middleman, and that middleman would go forward. They went all the way to the Black Sea was a big place. You notice Crimea, which is there right at the top of that little peninsula. That's been a hot spot for millennia. And from there, they went into Europe and whatnot. So they kept at it. And it was like from 200 BC to about the 1450s because, what happened was, let's see. Oh, yeah, there we go. Private merchants. Oh, it's decentralized. If there were bandits or pirates or greedy tax collectors, but I repeat myself, gave them trouble, they would just move through another way to make it happen. And archaeologists have great fights. Yes, it was probably more more sea than land. And the big change was in the early 1400s, the Turks started blocking off the Silk Road. So that's when the Europeans tried going around the south end of Florida, south end of Africa,
Africa.
was the Portuguese, and then the Spaniards had this wild Italian guy who said, "Hey, India is probably only about 3,000 miles away." He didn't know that there's a whole other continent, and that's when you're exploring new places. So anyway, that started that, and they started doing really well. And that, in fact, that changed the world. Pretty soon, they had a new route, their new routes going places, and they took over much of what had been the richest place in the world, which had been Asia, India, China, what's now Indonesia. Those were civilizations that were much older. Maybe as my namesake, Randall Carlson, is saying, hey, there was great civilizations there during the ice ages while Europe was under 6 feet of snow, or maybe even a mile when you get up into Scandinavia. So there's these dynamics of things of government stuff. First, the Germans came up with a fancy artillery called the V1s and V2s. The V2 is a rocket that could get up into the stratosphere. And naturally, people started saying, yeah, a bigger V2, and we could go into orbit. That strange new idea, which had been dreamed about but never happened. Then there was Sputnik got a space race going, and the only way John F. Kennedy, the president, could try to save American face was he said, "We're going to put a man on the moon this decade," and the people at NASA said, "What?" And then they said about doing it, which was all great until the United States won the moon race, and then interest started waning big time. Yeah. And even worse, they said, okay, we're going to go to Mars. And by the way, it'll cost this much. At that time, it was about $300 billion. That was real money in those days. So that's when NASA was still doing things, but it was just very slow, and they never improved because it was cost plus launches. There was somebody wanted to have big dumb boosters, and the other contractors took him off to the other room off to the side and said, "Don't you ever say that again," because they were making money with cost plus. And finally, it was Elon Musk who really started things off again, and a business type person, and he's basically done big smart boosters, which was more possible because technology had evolved. Because his first thing was blank sheet of paper. I'm redesigning it. Don't need near as many pipes and valves. Do it. And then he said, hey, reusable first stages. The Space Shuttle was originally going to have a pilot piloting that first stage back, which probably lost some pilots there.
Wow.
But anyway, with the robotics, he could do reusable first stages, which drops the price. He had 3D printed parts, dropped the price. Methane fuel, which has now been copied by a Chinese company, and I think the European Space Agency is working on a methane fuel booster. It's cheap, but it's still too expensive. Do we have a better route? Following the thoughts of the Silk Road and other people, find a new road. And I say, go equatorward, young astronaut.
Right. And
so here's the problem with our present orbital things. It really isn't quite that bad because this is a remote sensing satellite, aka spy satellite, and it goes up so you can see a lot of Siberia and Moscow and St. Petersburg and that sort of thing. The thing is, these orbits, if you're going anyway but straight across on the equator, you have to go down and back up, and the Earth is turning underneath you. So the orbit might only be 90 to say 100 minutes. And it gets longer time as you get higher up in a higher orbit.
Oh.
The point is, there's this whole web of places that you're going over. So it doesn't go over your launch site, but maybe once a day or less. And so if you want to resupply, you got to wait for just that one time or two times a day to do that. And if you're anything off that, then you have to do a lot of maneuvering. So it gets to be, that's part of an expensive thing. It's so much easier if you just go along the orbit. And interestingly, this shows that somebody, a rocket taking off right from the coast of Brazil on the equator.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you keep doing that, and about every 90 minutes, something comes overhead. If you want to send a resupply, well, I can do it at 8 o'clock. I can do it at 9:30, 8 in the morning, 9 or 9:30, or 11, or 12:30. You've got all kinds of opportunities. It's a much nicer thing. It saves you a lot of money.
But can you stay on the equator basically the whole time?
Yeah, well, it's actually a little more complicated because the Earth goes up and down, but that's a slow drift during the year. But it's not a real big thing versus launching from Florida, a really bad Tiratem in Kazakhstan, which is way in the north of Eurasia. So anyway, I forgot. The first thing is roughly 5 miles per second needed to orbit. Just launching east gives you 1 mile per second. So that gets you 20% of the way there. And eventually you're going to be you want to go to geosynchronous orbit for a lot of the most profitable things, like the big ComSats, or if you're going to go further out into space. The equator is kind of roughly equivalent to the plane of the ecliptic for the solar system. So if you're going to Mars or something, eventually, like Elon Musk, who's a starry-eyed spacer by all accounts, he wants to go to Mars, being on the equator. And then, of course, likewise, if you're you're in a hurry, you want to get launched, you might not be close to the angle of somebody unless you're on the equator. So you might have to do some dogleg course corrections, which costs you time. It costs you fuel. It costs you greater risk. So 3 bad things there. So you get faster, safer, cheaper rendezvous if you're at the equator. And the same thing goes back if you want to return things. You got more chances to drop down onto a landing site.
Wow.
There's a lot of benefits to it. Now, a little history there. In the early 50s, NASA was considering, actually, they might have been the other agency before NASA was formed. Anyway, he went to Brazil and came back and said, well, yeah, we have all those advantages, but there's not enough technology there. That was 75 years ago. So since then, Brazil has built up a lot of industry. There's the internet. There's jet flights back and forth. So Brazil would be just fine. Another candidate place, the Indonesians are building their own spaceport, and it would be there's a couple islands that they're using for their range for launching. It's just a little west of Singapore. How handy. And that would be something that Asian countries would like. China, it's still, I think they've lost a few sheep herders now and again because they're launching out of an inland area. They're supposed to be building, they are building a Hainan launching place, Hainan Island, which is down near Vietnam, but that's still quite a few degrees up. I think it's like 30 some degrees or something for Hainan Island. Now, French Guiana is 5 degrees north of the equator, but that's pretty close considering they've already built the place.
Right.
And so they already have a spaceport. They already have connections. So that gives you 3 launching places already. Kenya is another one. They have a coast right on the. They have a coastal area on the equator or close to the equator. Somaliland would be even better, but they're that's not a good place to be at any time. That's where the pirates hang out. Speaking of same pirates that the Chinese were treasure fleets were shooting up 500 years ago. There is one more. The United States probably would hate to get out of there, get frozen out. So there's some little islands the United States owns right on the equator, pretty much due south of Hawaii, which does make it a long trip. But still, it's a good place, and the United States it's got a lot of money, so we might build up some of those islands. Yeah, getting to it. Why would these countries do it? If there's those benefits in price for countries, the northern countries that already have launches, and the global south, they've always complained that, hey, you're doing your space stuff, your science stuff. We're always with the beggars looking for crumbs to come down. How about if we do it? And it would be profitable for them, say Brazil, if it was a launch site, the northern countries would pay, bring their rocket technology and such. But along the way, they would probably need some little welding fix-ups to be done. Stuff would be spare parts would coming in. It's the last thing, some fixes. So people would learn some of that technology. They would get some money about it. So they would be part of this great thing. And of course, I was mentioning several places because, like the Silk Road, the lesson there is if there's a revolution, if there's a tidal wave, if there's a big volcanic eruption, you've got other launch sites. And this has been a problem for the United States. When hurricanes went, Florida was the only launch site for America. Guyana has its own things. The United States, JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, I worked for, they were doing one joint mission with French in particular of ESA, and just about everybody that went down there to French Guiana came back with some dreaded tropical disease. So that could be some problems there. Zip. That's why I was thinking we call it the Silk Road Flyway, because that's sort of the model for how this is working. You can call it the Conquistador Flyway, but that has some bad memories for a number of ethnic groups. But the Silk Road is exotic enough that people like it. In passing, the Chinese government has tried doing the Belt and Road Initiative, and they've had some problems because it's a very big project, and sometimes the building these things doesn't work. So you got to make a profit at it. Yeah, hopefully they'll do better on their Belt and Road. And just for starters, I was giving maybe 3 possible things. I've got more. I got a bunch of them, but some of the 3 good things to start, and maybe other people might pop off with some other ideas that they might have, which might be some that I haven't come up with. First, you essentially build your own another station that would be an orbital assembly facility. In fact, SAF is a word that they use in NASA, spacecraft assembly facility. This is just an orbital SAF. And the plus on that is that basically spacecraft in a deep space or for communication satellites have 2 crucial barriers to function. 2 danger points. One is getting the fairing, where the spacecraft is in. If that hangs up, you're 200 million, or even, for the big new space telescope, the James Webb. I think it was about 4 or 5 billion by the time it's over. If that fairing had hung up, that would have been pretty much a loss.
Yep.
And then another thing is there's essentially a reverse origami thing, like the Japanese folding art. Well, the spacecraft antennas and sometimes the telescopes, and if they have photovoltaic panels, those things are all folded in ever so neatly, and they have to unfold. There's a problem. It might be a total loss. For instance, it came very close. The Galileo that went out to Saturn, it was delayed because there was a booster disaster. And so it sat in a warehouse, and the lubricant got apparently dried out, and there was a big, essentially a reverse umbrella, the big antenna, and it was supposed to open up and look at the Earth to send high frequency or high volume of data. The umbrella wouldn't open.
Right.
So people had to do exotic software, and a picture that ordinarily with a high gain antenna would be transmitted in 30 seconds might take 2 days. It was heroic software. People rescued that mission from a disaster. But if you have an assembly facility, you just assemble the whole thing. Even better yet, you might even have other parts that you can add, and then you gently push it out. It can be fully opened up to do its things and go on its way. Yeah, it's the same thing with the ComSats, because they have a whole bunch of feed horns that are looking off in all directions. Of course, they have a big power panel. Again, you want to have those all out. You can check them. Everything works. And so, boom, that is a big thing. Next, the way SpaceX does, they have essentially like one extra rocket. If one rocket doesn't work, there's still enough extra fuel to get to orbit. Well, hey, you might as well drain off any fuel and you'd save it there. And so that would give you power to run tugs. And that would be the place where, speaking of those things, even if they worked when they were sent out, like the James Webb Giant Telescope or ComSats, a robot tug could go out, wrap its arms around, just like the chopsticks that they're using to grab boosters, first stage boosters coming back for SpaceX. They could bring back a ComSat or a telescope. There's also a Spitzer telescope and Hubble. Those two old, they're venerable, but they're still going. You could bring those back, refill them with coolant helium, and make them, or hey, just add a few more instruments, or repair, replace old instruments if need be. That's what you can do with a tug base, and you can get some of those nasty old boosters that got left, or even a few nuclear power power in some of the spy satellites that the Soviets had. And finally, my thought is, why let things drop down? What you need is a big trash dump. You keep that stuff. You can crunch it, because I didn't mention the South Atlantic anomaly is right near the equator, actually not too far from Brazil. And we're going to get a little more radiation there if you're on the equator all those times. So if you have a recycling center, just kind of crunch that stuff and make it into big sheets that you can put on your space stations and do a little more protection from stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's three. There's there's more, and certainly people that are trying to make money are going to find more. So the main points are governments may abandon space development, just like the Jade Throne abandoned the great voyages off to India and Africa. The marketeers, like in the Silk Road, they're the ones that keep things going. Like in their case, about 1,600 years, it was going in one shape or another.
Wow.
And finally, it'd be the equatorial orbit corridor. That would be the route for the new Silk Road. And I believe that is all I've got. There we go. So now I could go back and wow, you were fast.
Wow, that's amazing. And as far as our audience goes, thank you so much for waiting. If you're ready, Roger, I will go ahead and go through a bunch. We got a bunch. You gonna do them?
Yeah. Cliff
Hey,
says hi.
hey, Cliff.
He showed up from Australia.
And Daniel too. Hey.
Oh, great historical scholarship.
Yeah, thank you.
AC, the caravel was developed by the Portuguese in the 15th century, a much better sailing ship than the Chinese vessels, and it made all the difference. We need a new caravel. Yeah. It made it easier.
It probably sailed a little faster, but the biggest ships in the Chinese fleet of jugs was the treasure ships were 6-masted sailing ships. They were as big as the ships, a lot of the freighters in World War II. Of course, all made out of wood. They were just huge. And I forget the old ex-submariner who he was thinking, maybe the treasure fleet actually sailed into the Mediterranean. And I was thinking, no, I think we would have heard about that if they did. But they were huge. If they'd kept sailing and 4 little ships with 170 guys had met a fleet that had 17,000 people with cannons, cavalry, infantry, they would have just got creamed because at the time, China also had the best artillery, and they just let it mildew, just like the ships. They unfortunately, at the last voyage, the emperor who had been supporting it passed away, and the new guy coming in said, "This is kind of expensive, and those pesky Mongols or some of their other neighbors are big. We're going to rebuild more of the Great Wall," and they just tied them up at the dock. And
they burned them.
Well, that's by one account.
Right,
by one account, they deliberately burned them. By another account, they just tied them up and let them rot, and then eventually burned them, or they sank at the dock.
Yeah,
kind of like some of the Russian submarine fleet in different places. But that's another story. Anyway, so the caravel. There were some advances that the Europeans had, including they had their own gunpowder. And they got better cannons, which was pretty handy for them when the riots came out in Calcutta. They might have got killed.
And Jack C. Hi, I'm Cletus. Is there a way I can join the meeting?
No. Well, I have an answer to that. Go ahead and send an email to pam@everydayspacer.com, because if you would like to be a guest on the show, we can talk about that and schedule a date.
Yep.
And it'll work out. Thank you for asking.
Oh, and I might add, they asked me to send a nice headshot and a description of the presentation that I was proposing to give.
Yep. It was fabulous.
Yep. And Cliff says, very interesting, and it makes sense. I think that was when you were talking about having the launch sites on the equator. That's when I saw that comment show up. AC, Elon's first rocket launched from Kwajalein Atoll. That atoll in the Pacific. So
a K got in by mistake, since K is right next to the J. So it's Kwajalein.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I knew a bunch of people that worked at Kwajalein. That is
Mm.
The anti-missile program, a lot of test missiles would go to there, and Kwajalein has a lot of radars and other tracking things to see how the rockets come in, how close they are to their target and whatnot.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And Cliff said aluminum oxide from space junk will harm the ozone layer.
Mm.
Hmm.
I heard that.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that there is, but yeah, keeping it up there and using it is definitely better than letting it burn up in our atmosphere.
Oh, totally.
If nothing else, we spend a lot of money getting it up there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even with
Resources.
I think Musk he's got it down to like $50 a pound instead of $1,000 a pound, but that's still.
Boy, I didn't think it was that low, but
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah,
I know
that's
he's going for
that's
that.
the optimistic thing with the giant booster.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
And
That's
Cliff,
funny.
again. Oh, he just found out that he can
Yeah.
watch on his big new smart TV and type comments on his phone at the same time.
That's
Right.
brilliant.
And Scott, oh yeah,
Great
Scott,
info.
great info.
Absolutely. I thought it was
Mhm.
just brilliant.
And Naomi,
Okay.
yeah, she thought it was very interesting and says thank you.
Okay, I'll take
There's one more.
any comments. I'll hold them in my heart today, as the saying
Okay.
goes.
Scott says,
Great question.
you know how much percent of fuel savings for an equatorial rocket launch versus a launch from Florida?
Boy, that's yeah.
That's one beyond my ken. I was just a documentation guy, so I heard
That's a
these
math
things
thing, huh?
just in general terms.
Yeah.
Other people did the calculations.
Yeah.
And Janie, fascinating fun. Enormous amount of information in a short time. I missed having Roger as my history professor for much more interesting facts not covered in my classes. Thanks.
Yeah, Scott, you bring up a good point. If there's a way, or if anybody knows, or Roger, if you know somebody from when you worked there, to find out about this percentage of fuel, that might be a good episode to talk about things like that. I mean, especially if you can go up there and get it and use it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, we got another one.
Yeah, Daniel.
Yay.
Hey, Daniel. This space flyway intersects well with the NASA Equatorial Space Elevator Advanced Studies.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know NASA was working on that stuff.
Yeah. Well, NASA's got its fingers in a bunch of pies.
It's true.
And some of them are just they do a study, and it's like, well, this won't happen for a long time. In fact, like one of them I didn't get to, or a couple of them I didn't get to. One is for Mars. They were talking about a big inner tube that would be put on a probe, so it would slow it down in the atmosphere slowly. You go a number of orbits as you get lower and lower, and that saves on the amount of heat that you get and amount of other things. And if you're on the equatorial orbit, then you know where you're at, so you know where it's going to land much better, rather than going up and down, going as far north as Canada and as far south as the middle of Brazil.
Oh, that'd be really useful.
So they're actually, or like, going to Angola to the south, or Sweden to the north. So that would be one thing. Another one that they proposed, not elevator is the ultimate thing, but along the way there's a bolo, where if you have, say, two big cables, and one is at the top and one is at the bottom, and as it's going along, it's rotating on these cables. So the ends,
right,
when it's at the bottom side, it's going much slower. So you could save fuel connecting on the bolo and come up. And then of course, as I forgot the name of the person that was commenting there, as he was saying, ultimately, if you have really good technology, you have an elevator, and you want to be you have to be at an equatorial spot, and your orbit is at 22,300, I think, miles. Then your orbit is going just about as fast as the Earth is rotating. So it seems like you're standing still. And then, as Arthur C. Clarke did in The Fountains of Paradise, there's people riding the cable car, riding the elevator up and down to get to those places. The problem is you have to have an elevator that's not just 22,000 miles down. You have a counterweight that's going to be maybe another 5 or 10,000 miles longer up at the top above it.
Mhm.
Oh,
That's a lot of construction. And they first said the material to make it would be unobtainium.
Yep.
Although there are some materials they've gotten better
Yep.
with things. They think they might be able to make it strong enough, but it's
graphene
still
nanotubes.
mostly theoretical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a few decades away.
Yeah.
So
Well, the good thing about having the counterweight up so high is that by the time the elevator got to the counterweight, it's actually have a fairly decent velocity, rotational velocity, and you could use that for launching to other other bodies in the solar system.
Yeah, that's right. You might get another mile per second or something like that with no expenditure of fuel mass.
Right.
right.
And the
Uh,
boiler can do that, some of that too,
Right.
with a lot
Yeah.
shorter cable. It won't get as much
Yeah.
thrust, but it will get some.
So we got a couple more comments, but real quick, I wanted to make sure that people knew, and I put the link in the comments. It should be clickable. That Roger has a website of the same name as his books, so you can go there and learn more about him and what he's doing. Go ahead with comments. We got a couple more comments for you, Roger.
Cliff says every piece of junk up there is, and every 5 to 7 days, 5 to 7 a day come down. So yeah, it's adding up for the aluminum oxide in the upper atmosphere.
Okay, I get it.
And on the other stuff that is harmful, which there is a lot. Yeah.
So maybe better to leave it up there. Yeah, I'm sure there's I don't know if you've ever driven and you've seen cars going this way and then sort of a triangle of debris in between the different ways the cars are going. There's got to be stuff like that up there in orbit too. I mean, just little pockets of resources.
Yeah.
That's the way I think about it, though.
Yeah. Think of it's not a problem. It's an opportunity.
Absolutely.
But
right.
actually, I could give the worry about it. It's called I want to say the Kessler syndrome.
Yes.
Where it was illustrated by a derelict, old Russian satellite ran into a working satellite, and blam, created several thousand smaller pieces, all of which are still going. They might be at a relative velocity of several miles per second, which is like shooting bullets at everything that hits them, that they hit.
I thought the Chinese hit something, and they were.
Well, the Chinese deliberately destroyed something. The Russians deliberately destroyed something. Just the military testing, and I think the Indians tried it. I don't know about the Indians, and if we've done it, I haven't heard about it. But
yeah, we did.
Okay.
We did. I said, well, there's this one satellite. It might be a problem, so we'll just have to destroy it. It's like, well, you made one problem into 1,000 problems, and how is that an improvement? I can't quite follow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of not. We did promise that we would tell you about the other things that Roger supported at JPL. So here's the list. Roger worked on radar satellites, space probes, space telescopes, and solar power. Now, you had a comment here, Roger. JPL was the NASA lead center for both photovoltaics and solar thermal, and then communication satellites too. So we wanted to make sure we got that in there for you because we kind of left a teaser in the description.
Oh yeah, I get.
And there's the whole
I
list.
was a generalist. Anybody that came in with funding to the documentation section, we do pictures for them. We edit their text. My favorite was one Wonder Sky, who had 20 pages of a text, fabulous things, one sentence.
Oh,
period.
Wow.
Oh no! So you had to build everything around the one sentence and a bunch of pictures.
Well, actually, there's the politics were there too. He could etch one layer at a time off of computer chips, and he came from, I believe, Poland. So this is when I met him. This was in the 80s. So the Cold War was still sputtering along. He must have come probably 10 or 20 years earlier. So he had to go underneath the barbed wire. And he said, where I come from, they would change everything I wrote. Well, now I'm here. I'm not going to change anything. So his math was good. His pictures of what he did were good. It was just, it's a story of, it gives perspective on the world. And
Yes. Very interesting. All right. So, Roger, stick around. We're going to watch for more comments. We got a couple other sections of the episode, so we'll go into that. And if we get a good comment for you, we'll absolutely share it with you and the rest of the audience.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Janie already has one. Great anecdote.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right. Good. You're up.
Okay. Some stellar events this week, May 30th through June 6th. May 30th, Pollux is 2.3 degrees north of the moon. May 31st, Venus is at greatest western elongation, 46 degrees west of the sun.
Look in the morning.
Yep. June 1st, Mars and the moon are in conjunction. Mars is 1.4 degrees south of the moon, and Regulus is 1.8 degrees south of the moon.
Boy, is that close.
Yeah. June 2nd is first quarter moon. June 3rd, moon is at descending node. June 4th, moon is on the equator. June 6th, June 5th, I'm leaving on a jet plane, but June 6th, Spica is 0.5 degrees north of the moon. Also on June 6th is our Friday night show, and Pam is looking at a new citizen science project. Find us Fridays at 9 p.m. Pacific time on the Everyday Spacer Facebook page and the Everyday Spacer YouTube channel.
What inspires you the most for the coming week? We've got Cliff decided to come back. Oh boy, I love that one. I showed a video to my astronomy club on a subject and was looking at the moon with a scope and photobombed by a big booster spinning around. Lots of stuff still up there and will be for years. Well, unless there's a nice hub to collect it all and reuse that stuff. Real quick, this was so fun this week. And it got, go ahead and share.
Okay.
Share, yeah, this one. Because there is this really cool space selfie thing. I guess they've had a lot of people. Spaceselfie.com is, but this one says space.crunchlabs.com. I actually got in. I got to add my picture to the flight. They're going to have pictures on a screen, which then you can get with a background of the Earth, and then they'll send them back to you. And this is, if you know Mark Rober from the glitter bombs at Camp Crunch Labs, he's the person. And sadly, I had like my picture, but all of it's no more. But they're going to be on SatGus. Oh, it looks like they've actually got. Yeah, look at that. It looks like it's even live. This is named after the fat squirrel from his yard. And so I filled out the form and sent it in, and sure enough, okay, interesting. So even these reset whenever, but whenever I reboot every night before the show, so we have a clean computer. But if you want to eventually go to spaceselfie.com, fill in the form, you will get a chance and a little certificate that says, and there's the fat squirrel, that you can in fact go get your picture in space with basically it's the background of the Earth in the background. The curvature of the Earth is in the background, and I actually picked up one of the images from our show, so it's the two of us. And anyway, so It's just a fun thing you can do, and I wanted to make sure you knew how to do it. Oh, we got another comment, right?
Yep, a couple
Oh,
more.
2. Okay.
Daniel says Starlink launch from Vandenberg tomorrow around 1300, which is
Oh, during the day though, it's gonna be hard to see, right? Not 1 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay.
But for those of us who are close enough to have a chance to see it, yeah. Cliff says Houston, we have a problem was never said.
History is like that.
Yeah.
Better quotes I remembered later on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like beam me up, Scotty. That was never in the Star Trek episodes, but it sure is common in the lingo.
Yep. Yeah.
Apparently, Sagan never really said billions and billions. It was Johnny Carson. It was
Carson.
Think about it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was Carson mimicking Sagan.
Oh boy.
He did say the word billions once, but Carson liked the way he said it so much that he said it twice.
Interesting. All right, so if you or someone you know has done something interesting involving space exploration, science, or astronomy, we'd love to share our live, just like we did tonight with Roger. Join us again next Friday, June the 6th. I was thinking about Zooniverse, and I had an idea for something a little different, and then I noticed a new project called Name That Neutrino. I don't think it's a game show, but we'll look into that next week. And Jeff's going to be in Michigan, so I will be doing the episode myself. And get ready, we did have another guest who signed up for June the 20th, one of our biggest fans. Will share her thoughts on staying healthy in space. Maybe you remember Janie Becker. She probably has several topics.
Well, she's commenting right now. This tonight's episode.
Very good, very good. Yeah, we got a few more comments. Go ahead and run those.
A friend saw satellite train 2 days ago after the launch.
Those are neat, yeah.
Scott says, great show. Thanks, Roger.
Great show.
And welcome to Scott and everybody else.
And good stuff. See you guys next week from Cliff and Naomi. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Roger, and have a good night, all. Yeah.
All right. So, everybody, Naomi and Cliff and Scott and Janie was here, and Daniel. Yay, Daniel. You got another
JC.
one, right? JC. AC. Dawn was here. I think we got them all now.
No, there was another
guy
that was Jack.
Jack. Cletus. Actually, it says Cletus.
Yep.
That's really funny. It says Jack sees them. I'm Cletus. All right. Did you get the last? There's another.
No. Janie says, excellent episode.
Thank you, Janie.
And Daniel says, great work, Roger.
Absolutely. All right, folks. We will continue to watch your comments afterwards. Thank you so much for being here, Roger. We really appreciate that. Anything else for you?
No.
Any last comments, Roger?
Okay. Comment is, there's a lot more in orbit for future reference. We deal with becoming a spacefaring civilization, but we have the great dreaded disease of planetophilia. And so that would be a thing. We've got to get used to the idea of being in space, and hence planetophilia, which is a natural condition. We spent 1 million years evolving on a planet. We can't imagine anything else. And it'll be obvious.
Yeah.
Some of us can. All right. Thank you for that, Roger. Hang around a little bit. We'll talk to you afterwards. Folks, have a great week.
Yep.
We will be here next
Bye,
Friday. Same place, same time. Thanks. Good night.